Well, hello everyone. This is kind of a throwback to be recording to a laptop, but since our live stream didn't work this past Sunday, I thought I would give you a little taste of what the sermon was like. And we'll start with what we did with our children's sermon. Now, how many of you recognize this branch? Now, it didn't look anything like this. It looks very different. But I want to say 4 weeks ago, we ended our series on Jeremiah and talked about a branch that sprouted from a stump. And then I said, keep an eye out for this branch because it may look different next week. And then nothing happened with the branch. What was supposed to happen was we were supposed to have a tree come into the sanctuary, but the logistics of that just didn't work out. So we decided to not go with it. But then I was thinking about it, and I realized there is a tree in the sanctuary, and that is the tree of life. Now, this is an image that has been, used throughout the centuries through many different cultures. But basically, the idea is that this tree has, God or the creation at the bottom of it. And from God, all the branches come out, so that if God is down here, maybe you are right here. And maybe your parents were right here, and your grandparents were right there. And maybe, the animals is over here, and creation, and just all of creation is connected back to God in this tree that just branches and connects everyone together. There's an image that I've shown before that I think helps me think about the tree of life, and it's this family tree that I have hanging at home back in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And it's the Mayhew family tree, and right at the bottom of it is Thomas Mayhew, who left England on the second voyage of the Mayflower. And I'm always amazed when I look at this tree because this one person made a decision to go and to leave his country. My whole life exists here. And, if I was on this tree, I would be probably like way, millions of branches off of this actual image. But it's a way of thinking. Genealogy trees are a way of thinking about the tree of life. It's a similar concept. But instead of just connected to our tree, we are connected to everyone and all of creation. And so I was just thinking about how that tree is present. It's even present on the gate of our memorial garden. You can see it there. But that tree is ever present around us, connecting us. So you can even say that the cross is a little bit like a tree, right? It's made of a tree, obviously, and the original cross is probably more tree-like than our super fancy crosses we have today. But it is like a tree, right, with God's arms, Jesus' arms branching out to all of creation. All of God's creation is connected. So that's something I like to keep as an image in my mind. Now, our reading for this weekend was Isaiah 65, verses 17 through 25. And it was a powerhouse of a reading. And so I want to read it for you, and I want you to relax, maybe sit back in your seat, whatever helps you to get comfortable, to be able to focus and to listen, or whatever helps you to kind of imagine as you're listening. So you can close your eyes or read along, or just settle into your seat. God says, "For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. Be glad and rejoice forever in what I am creating. For I am about to create Jerusalem as a joy, and its people as a delight. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and delight in my people. No more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it, or the cry of distress. No more shall there be in it an infant that lives but a few days, or an old person who does not live out a lifetime. For one who dies at 100 years will be considered a youth, and one who falls short of 100 will be considered accursed. They shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be. And my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain, or bear children for calamity. For they shall be offspring, blessed by the Lord, and their descendants as well. Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox, but the serpent, its food, shall be dust. They shall not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, says the Lord. A brand new heaven and a brand new earth, a fresh start. All of the former pain, all of the former tears, forgotten. Out of mind, no longer haunting us. No more weeping, no more pain, no more distress. No more infants who only live a few days, and no more lives cut short before old age. All will have houses, all will eat the food that they grow, and everyone will have enough to live. No one will steal their land from them, and no one will take away the food that they need. No one will exploit the land or pollute the air or the streams, and all will be paid fairly for their labor, and they will live long, joyful, happy lives filled with well-being and with health. Children will not be born into war or conflict. Instead, they will be blessed, as will their offspring, because before they even pray, God will answer them. The wolf and the lamb, the natural enemies, the ones who would fight and would destroy, will eat together. And the lion will eat straw like the ox. No more violence. And evil's only food will be dust. No one will hurt or destroy on God's holy mountain. Everyone will belong, all creatures, all creation, taken care of, blessed and at peace. This has to be one of the most incredible, most wonderful images in all of the Bible. I feel like I don't even need to preach. Like I could just leave it here and we can call it a day. Just the joy and the hope of this promised holy mountain is just awe-inspiring. An image of a world where all wrongs are made right, where all tears will be wiped away. It's enough for you to pause and just go, wow, that's the world I want to live in. That is God's holy mountain. Now, the image of this final week of creation, of the season of creation, is mountain and hill. And while I would have been glad to have preached on any of the images, I was thrilled to find out that this week would be mine. Because I think more than any other feature in creation, mountains and hills are closest to my heart. I don't know what it is, but I am drawn to high places. to bluffs, to cliffs, to observation towers on high rolling hills. I rarely can pass up a chance to pull over when I see that overlook sign on the side, scenic overlook sign on the side of the road. Even if it's going to make me late to my destination, I have to know what it is or what there is to see. Because the views from these places call to something deep within me. Even though I'm also terrified of heights, or more specifically, falling off of things. But still, there's something just exhilarating about climbing up and looking out and seeing a place that you may even know well from a brand new viewpoint. That cold wind whipping through you without any trees or buildings to slow it down. The horizon stretching out into the distance. The tiny houses and cars and the people like ants going to and fro, walking in the far distance. It's almost as if I measure my life by what I like to call these vista moments. These moments where you can look out and you just see everything. Moments where when upon a high place, you gaze out and you see the world as it is and not as you imagine it when your head is down and you're going about your day-to-day business, but from a viewpoint that you've never seen it before. And it almost reshapes your mind in a way. Like you can never, once you've seen the world as it is from above, you can never quite look at the things around you the same. I can remember the view from, I think, almost every tall peak that I've ever climbed. I can remember where I was and where I was going, and it's all like they're snapshots in my mind, these vista moments where I reflected on where I had been, where I was, and where I was going. I mean, literally, on a high point, you can see where you've been, where you're going, and where you are because there's nothing blocking your view. But it's also, more than that. It's like your past and your present and your future are all there for the viewing, and you just sit and wonder about where are you going and where have you been. Something about hills and mountains instantly connect me to the divine, to the image of that holy mountain that we just read about, to a mental state where I realize just how big and how wonderful God's world actually is. It feels significant, like a moment that really, truly matters. A moment when suddenly the scale of life becomes clear and all those small problems that seem to occupy your mind all the time, they just seem to fade away for a moment. And I suddenly appreciate the miracle it is to be alive, to be here on this earth, and to look around and see how I am surrounded by all these people who are also miracles, that everything in their life brought them to this point that life exists here at all. Now, I could go on all day. Maybe it's because I was born in southeastern Wisconsin, a land of rolling hills and kettle moraine forest and constantly undulating landscape. It's just what I think of when I imagine Earth or home. It's just this rolling landscape. And I remember going to Nebraska to visit family for the first time and just being mind blown that if I stood on the back of my Uncle Dale's pickup truck, that I could see the next town like 25 miles or something in the distance. I'm like, how is it possible that you could see something that far away? I just had never seen a world that was so flat, and my mind was blown. So imagine my shock when I found myself living in Illinois. I'm grateful to live in Joliet now, where at least there's a little bit of elevation change here and there. But it's much better than my Romeoville apartment, which was just flat as far as the eye could see. And yes, driving to Lockport, anytime I get to go there, feels like a special treat because you get to go over the big bridge and you go up the hill and the mountain. It's very, very pretty. But yes, I do miss the mountains and hills of home. But I wonder, what is a special place for you? What is a mountain or a hill that is sacred to you, and that, when you visit it, it brings up emotions? Or, is it a hill, a high place, a favorite mountain? I just wonder for you what that might be. Now, I've been lucky enough to be among many hills and mountains in my lifetime, but I just wanted to share with you a few of the ones that have really stuck with me. Probably the most beautiful mountains that I've ever seen is the Alps when I was studying abroad in Paris. We went on a little weekend journey, and this particular picture was from this mountain little town that was right in the middle between two giant valleys, and just everywhere you looked, it was like, whoa, mountains way up there and mountains way up there. It's kind of like when you see those clouds on the horizon that almost look like mountains. Well, this was like for real, and they just were so massive and just took up so much space. Everywhere you looked, it was just absolutely gorgeous. And other pictures where you just look out the side of the train car and you just see these mountains obscured in clouds. I think this is the tallest mountain in Switzerland, if I remember correctly. And then just these kind of like almost unreal little mountain scenes where you see a little cabin like nestled into the hills, like it was just made to be there. Little chalets, Swiss chalets, and then just mountains just arcing up all over the place. I highly recommend going to Switzerland if you ever get the chance and to ride the train through the mountains. And then another one is one that I've talked about before, and that is Holden Village. Holden Village is a Lutheran retreat center up in the Cascade Mountains in Washington State. It takes a long time to get there. It's like a 2-hour boat ride up this river, and then you have to take a school bus that switchbacks up the side of the mountain. It's very terrifying. And then it's like a half an hour drive into the wilderness to find this old mining village. And this picture was taken every morning. We would wake up and do morning prayer. We'd go out in nature and sing the morning prayer service. And the sun would literally rise in between those two peaks right in the middle. And you'd be like, the dawn from on high shall break upon us. And then it was like, bam! The sun would just go rocketing through those two peaks. I will never hear those words in Scripture again without thinking about this. And this is what it looks like. I didn't take this picture, but this is what it looks like when the clouds aren't obscuring it. Just this unreal, beautiful landscape. I highly recommend also Holden Village if you ever have a chance. Pastor Robin will probably be going there soon. But the only time I've ever actually climbed a mountain was in high school on a mission trip to Montana. And here I am with my hiking gear, got everything with me. It was a 2.5-day hike out to this mountain, and then a 2.5-day hike back just to climb it. We were, unshowered, out in the wilderness. There's the mountain in the distance. You can kind of see how it's one that you would walk up and not necessarily climb. But as you got higher and higher up the mountain, the rocks got bigger and bigger, and there would be these giant gaps in between the rocks the further you got towards the top, that it felt like if you fell down, you would just never be heard from again. It was absolutely terrifying. Here's my entire group that I was with. And you got to the top, and there's this little, peninsula that you had to climb onto to get this picture. It's probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done. But then it was just this 360-degree panorama of mountains in every direction. Just the scale of the Rocky Mountains was unreal to experience. Just so far away from humanity, so far away from all civilization. But, while these mountains are great, there aren't many mountains near us, right? Not in Illinois. It's just that can feel almost like an unrelatable unrelatable image. But there are so many hills that that have a special place in my heart, like Bascom Hill in UW-Madison. It's this big hill in the middle of the campus, and it looks out, you see the Capitol building, and I just remember all the times that I sat on the lawn and just thought about how I really didn't want to do my homework, having lots of college thoughts, like what am I doing with my life? Who do I want to be? Where am I going? You know, losing your childhood a little bit. Like all of these thoughts are just encapsulated on this hill. And seeing the sunrise in the morning over this, right next to the Capitol building, absolutely gorgeous. Or there's Devil's Lake, which is a park up in Wisconsin, which I really highly recommend going to if you've never been. It's these two bluffs on either side of this lake. I mean, you just look at these rock structures and you think, you know, what could have possibly been so big to kind of carve these things, to leave them in these incredible configurations. Yeah, it's an unreal place. But what I mostly want to talk about is this trip I had back in June of this year to Duluth, Minnesota, which I don't know how many of you have been to Duluth because it's kind of really out of the way. But I'd always heard about it being this beautiful city right on the shores of Lake Superior, big bluffs overlooking the lake. And so I always knew it would be pretty. Here's a picture I took of it from the shores of Lake Superior. But I didn't realize how pretty. Duluth is just stacked. Everything is just built up on the mountains that it's like San Francisco. Like you look in any direction and it just shoots up. The streets just go straight up the side of the bluff. It's absolutely beautiful just looking at it from that angle to see just how everything is marched up against the hill. But there's one place in particular, which was Anger Park. It's up on top of the bluffs that overlooks Duluth and Superior, Wisconsin, which is on the other side of the river and the border, and all of Lake Superior. It's just beautiful. I want you to just take a look at this. Look at this, you know, panorama. You can just see Duluth and the lake and the harbor. And there's Superior, Wisconsin across the water. And then just, yeah, stretching off into the distance. Here it is again with a wider view. I mean, I've been on taller mountains or hills before, but just the way that this was so wide open and you could just see so much from up there really just stuck with me a lot. And here you can see a more detailed view of downtown Duluth from there. Standing up there on that bluff, overlooking all of Superior, Wisconsin and Duluth and the St. Louis River emptying out into Lake Superior, it was awe-inspiring. It was like seeing that tree of life branching out from me, like I was standing near the root and it was just branching out into all of the creation in front of me. I could see all of the branches, city and suburb, river and lake and beach and forest, mountain and bluff. I could see an industrial town and a tourist trap, a downtown with high-rises and an idyllic countryside off in the distance, an interstate cutting its way through it all, through poor neighborhoods and rich neighborhoods, mansions and abandoned factories, and peppered throughout all of it were the people, the tiny people, the adults and the children, the grandparents and the newborns, the cars and the trucks, the animals on the ground and the fish in the water and the birds flying above. The tree of life with all its branches just laid out before me in a 360-degree panorama view. It was as though I was standing on God's holy mountain, glimpsing God's perspective, how God sees the world, seeing all of us not in our private lives with our head down in our realities that feel like they just exist by themselves, but as the truth of our existence, as one giant interconnected ecosystem. Branches on the same tree of life. I think that is what mountains and hills teach us. They give us a glimpse of what God sees. Now, at this point in the sermon, I didn't have a mountain by me, but I thought I would take a box and stand up at it and take a look and see what I could see in our sanctuary. Here's a picture of what that may have looked like. I don't know because I couldn't see myself. But from up there on that box, I could see it in this very room. I could see the truth that we often forget, that we're all connected. We are all branches of that same tree of life branching out from the cross. This high point allowed me to see that even the furthest branches out, even the people who were way in the back, were connected. Even the people who may not have known each other's names, they were connected as well. You are all a part of that same tree. And what mountains and hills teach us is that it's that same truth. We're all connected. Whether we're in the back pew, in the front pew, at home on our computer, or just anywhere on this earth, we are always connected. Mountains and hills help us to see that grand choir of creation singing God's praise. They give us God's perspective to drive home the most important truth that we are connected and that what we do here matters to each other and to the planet that we live on. We may try to pretend like we're Thoreau, off in that cabin on Walden Pond, like we're totally disconnected from the world, totally self-sufficient, like we made this world with our own hands and we can be completely independent from all people. But it's just not true. What we do branches out from us, affects every limb of the tree, whether it be a lake or a forest, a plant or a creature. And this is God's intent for us to know this truth deep in our bones, that we are all connected by design. It is not a mistake. Our future and our lives are entangled and woven together. On these hills and mountains, we get a momentary glimpse of that holy mountain, that place when we will all be together. We get a glimpse of it here and now, a place where all will live in peace together and all are provided for, where our destinies are intertwined. And in seeing this possibility, we see the world as God sees it. We see what it could be. We see the need to protect the earth and all its creatures and our neighbors, whether plant or animal, ocean or mountain, because in the well-being of our fellow branches, we will find our well-being. We are all connected, and if that tree thrives, it needs all of it to thrive. So up on this mountain, or maybe for a moment you have glimpsed that grand tree of life, soak in the view. Feel the cold, refreshing wind and let it awaken your heart. God has brought us up here to this high place to remind us that we are never alone, to comfort us in the knowledge that we are always surrounded by a divine creation and that we are an integral part of it. Without us, the next part of the branch can't grow, and without us, the rest of the tree suffers. It's to help us see that our actions matter, that we need to care for each other to make that vision of God's holy mountain free of pain, free of pollution, free of violence, to make it a reality in our midst. That's what we glimpse on the holy mountain. It is what we were made to do. To love God, to love others, to find a way to love ourselves, and to care for the creation that all of us call home. This planet, this precious, interconnected ecosystem that we make our home. Life could be like that holy mountain, and it will be someday. But until then, we've got work to do. At the end of the sermon, we talked about trying to make a commitment. We prayed for all living things around us in nature. And we took these little leaves and we wrote on it the answer to a question: how will we care for creation? And I want to ask you the same question. Maybe it's something that you've already done, like gardening or picking up trash or growing your own veggies. Or maybe there's something you haven't done yet. Maybe there's a book that you could read to learn more about what you could do, or about your local ecosystem and how you can help it thrive, or a documentary that you've been thinking about. Or maybe it's an experience that you've never had, like going on more walks or visiting Medewan National Prairie and learning about the environment that existed here before we got here. Or maybe you want to do something with the resources that you have. Maybe you want to donate to nonprofits that preserve habitats, or support businesses with green initiatives, or invest in companies who are taking a more responsible and sustainable path. Whatever it is, it's a commitment between you and God to be a part of that tree, to help it thrive. And maybe you can even find time to hang your own leaf on this tree, but just look, and when all the branches are doing things, what is possible? How that tree can be transformed. But when you hang your leaf, whether physically or in your mind, remember that you are part of that tree of life, and that your contribution is like a budding leaf bringing oxygen and new life into God's creation. Remember that this is a chance to make a personal commitment to being an agent of life and of healing in this world, to be who God created us to be. It's a recognition that God has given us a purpose to care for each other and to care for creation, and that what we do here matters. And a reminder that as a branch in that tree, we are never alone. We will always be connected. Thanks be to God. Amen.